Jen from Minrose Fiber Studio, and this is Weaving Wednesday. Ooh, wait, I forgot a tool. Hold on. Stay. Got it. Okay, now it's Weaving Wednesday. How are you doing this week? I hope you're having a good week. I had basically decided to skip Weaving Wednesday this week. I usually film on Tuesdays and I didn't film yesterday. And I was just sitting and crocheting, thinking the whole reason why I make Weaving Wednesday is so I won't neglect my weaving project. Weaving is kind of a secondary hobby for me, but I still really love it. And by filming a little bit each week, it kind of keeps me on track. It keeps me from neglecting a project that's part of a hobby that I actually really like. It's so easy to get distracted, especially when there's a lot of things you really like to do. And so Weaving Wednesday is a way to keep myself on task with whatever project I'm working on. And on the side, I tend to chat a little bit, and that way, if you find this channel and you find me a kindred spirit in any way and you want to hang out, we can hang out together, and you can also use this time as an opportunity to pull out your whips, your works in progress, and maybe get a little work done yourself. Just some quiet, cozy time. I feel like whenever I hit record, a jet flies by. Can you guys hear the jet? So like I said, I didn't record yesterday. I was at the end of a fast, and I'm not a doctor, and I don't recommend fasting to anyone, especially not without consulting your own doctor. It's something that I have done for quite a long time now. And the reason I fast about once a month is it really helps with inflammation. I think I'm too young to have arthritis. I'm in my 50s. So a lot of people might not think that's too young to have arthritis. Especially if you're listening to this and you're in your 20s, 50s probably sounds about right to you. But I'm telling you, once you get in your 50s, it still feels young, and you don't feel like you should have to struggle with something like arthritic inflammation. But one of the benefits I receive from my monthly fast is that it takes away any pain I feel from inflammation related to my arthritis. So that's one of the reasons I do it. I also do it for the other benefits that come with fasting. But like I said, not playing doctor here, not recommending it to anyone else. Mostly sharing that because I was on the last day of my fast, and so I was feeling really good on this fast, but I was feeling kind of low energy by yesterday afternoon and could not motivate myself to do any weaving. For those of you who are watching the crochet videos, I'm working on part 2 of the modern market bag, which I plan to have out next week. And I have most of the filming done for that. And I've started editing. I haven't actually finished the one that I'm working on in the video that's made from those bright colors. So I'm looking forward to finishing that so I can take some pictures. And so that's been a fun project. That is based off of a bag I made a pattern for quite a while ago, and it was inspired by a bag that I saw in the world that I just thought was really cool and interesting. And whenever I see something made of fabric, you know, something in the fashion world that I think is pretty cool and interesting, I always immediately think, how would I crochet that? So, because that is my medium, that's the medium I work in. I work with yarn. When I made that pattern, I just used single crochet and kept it pretty simple, but this time I'm using the ripple stitch. And I have to say, I am loving the texture of the ripple stitch, and I just think it looks really cool. I don't think the stitch I'm using is one you see every day. I think for people who are less familiar with crochet, they might look at it and not even realize they're looking at crochet, which is just kind of fun to do something a little bit different. I kind of want to make another one right after I finish this one, because I have some granny squares left over from a tank top that I made, and I just have a bunch of extra granny squares, and I think it would be really fun to make a version of this market bag using, like, having a stripe of granny squares going across the body just as a cool accent. And that would be very crochet forward, right? Everyone associates granny squares with crochet, or I think that's what everyone thinks of when they think of crochet. They think of a granny square, that or an Afghan. But I do think it would be fun to do that version. I bought some cotton, some Lion Brand 24/7 cotton, and that might be coming soon. I also have another top I'm working on, so I have a lot of projects taking up space in my head that I want to bring into reality. Last week, and I shared a little bit of this on my community post this week on the channel, I shared a couple pictures from the Botanical Gardens. My son volunteers at the Botanical Gardens, and they were having a volunteer appreciation brunch. And I love the Botanical Gardens, and so I just decided, rather than dropping him off, that I would just go in with my basket of crochet and get some crocheting done. And I was working on the market bag, and I found this mosaic tiled bench in the shade under a mesquite tree, surrounded by flowers, and there were butterflies and hummingbirds, and I was just kind of loving crocheting, being surrounded by all of that beautiful nature, listening to bird song. But the interesting side effect of crocheting out in public like that was that I had quite a few people stop and chat with me, which was kind of, different from my everyday life. I am a pretty big introvert. I don't go out that much. I have, a couple of good friends that I get together with. So the first thing that happened, and I hadn't even really started crocheting yet, I was just settling in with my work basket, and a woman came up to me and said, "Is there a school nearby?" And she kind of caught me off guard, because she just sort of asked it out of the blue, "Is there a school nearby here?" And I was like, "Well, probably, because it's our Botanical Gardens is kind of in the center of town. It's surrounded by neighborhoods." So I'm like, well, there's probably a school nearby. And that's when I stopped to listen and realized there was some rather loud sounds of children playing. And that's when I just said, well, often schools bring kids here on field trips, so there's probably just a field trip here today. And she's like, "Oh," and she's like, you're not the teacher?" And I think she was just taking me off guard altogether. And she's like, "You look like a Waldorf teacher." And And I don't know, what do you say to that? Thank you. But, and I guess the way I dress and just sitting there doing a handicraft, maybe I was giving off Waldorf teacher vibes. But then she ended up talking to me further, because she's like, oh, I learned how to do that a long time ago, only I learned crochet. So she didn't really recognize what I was making as crochet. And I said, oh, well, this is crochet. What I'm making is a crochet project. And she's like, oh, can I see? So she came over and, I crocheted a few stitches, and she seemed pretty interested. So I even gave her my card, which I never do. I always feel so cheesy when I give someone my card. But I just kind of told her, well, I do make tutorials for YouTube. I have a little channel, and, if you ever wanted to get back into crochet, you could check out my channel. So, Elizabeth, if you're watching this, hello. And so then she continued to enjoy the botanical gardens and moved on with her group. And it wasn't probably even 10 minutes before another couple approached me, and they saw what I was doing, and they were visiting from New Hampshire, and their daughter crochets, and they wanted to know where they could maybe find some yarn made by artists here in Arizona to take home to their daughter. So we talked a little bit about that, and I gave them a recommendation for a yarn shop here that often carries yarn dyed by local fiber artists. And after we chatted a bit, they kind of went on their way. And right about that time, while I was enjoying this sweet little bench I was sitting on, the sun creeped out through the branches, and it was starting to make my right arm really hot. So I got up and moved to another part of the garden, and I was sitting on a little wooden bench under a wooden pagoda next to the Zen garden portion of the botanical gardens. And there was a water feature there, and it was just so perfect. And there were quite a few people that would pass by me and even remark, oh, that just looks like, I don't know what they said, that it just looks so cozy, so perfect. Like, just to be sitting outside on a beautiful day, crocheting, doing something that you love in a beautiful place. And, my response was always, it is really nice. So in just about an hour and a half of crocheting at the Botanical Gardens, I talked to more people in one day than I kind of ever do, except for when I'm talking to you. But this might not seem introverted. This feels a lot more introverted to just sit here alone and talk out loud to myself. This feels very safe. You guys create a safe space for me to share and be my creative little introverted self. If you're still here, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you got a little work done too, and I'll see you next time. Bye.